Welcome to the CenterPoint Podcast, where nursing and law unite. Today, we are celebrating 7 years of CenterPoint being in business, and therefore I am wearing party beads. It is a great month to celebrate. And to celebrate, I could not think of anyone better to interview than Attorney Mike Brose. He is a phenomenal trial attorney from New Richmond, Wisconsin, and he was one of my very first clients. Mike Brose was a man who I would email and he would instantly reply with answers concerning how to build my business. His review is one of the first ones that I received and put on the back of my brochure, which he approved of. And so today I thought it best to interview him. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
So, Mike, I don't know if you remember the first time we met or not, but I happened to do a cold call to you, and your firm put me through to you, and your words to me were, I usually do not take these kind of calls. And my response was, well, today is a good day for you because you did. And then we set up a time to meet for lunch. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the first call. You must have been very persuasive because we have pretty good filters that keep people away from me generally. But I'm glad that call got through, and I certainly remember our lunch. I remember you were very enthusiastic, and we hit it off, and we discussed what services you offer. Of course, we do have used other nurses in the past for similar sorts of things, but I remember clearly getting together and enjoying your company and wanting to see if you would do some work with us.
And so soon after that, we did. In fact, I think it was at that lunch, you had a case that you thought I could be of use to you on. And so we did start working together. And Mike, I want to just celebrate you a little bit. So could you tell us a little bit about your background? I know that you have so much experience in PI and med-mal. So give us a little bit about your journey, and then what's the difference between PI and med-mal for those that might not know?
So my journey, if you will, I came to work here at Dordreau & Scow first as a clerk, I think in 1990, maybe 89. And I was working for some very experienced trial practitioners who had been, trying cases since the 60s. Excellent mentors. And I immediately became interested in doing PI litigation and general litigation. I had a knack for the forensic side of things, accident reconstruction, product safety engineering, that sort of thing. I didn't have a knack for the medical side of cases, the damages side of cases, and needed and still do need professional help with regard to that sort of thing. And that's where you kind of came in and other folks like you. You mentioned the difference between medical negligence cases and normal PI cases or auto cases, slip and fall cases, product liability cases. In one respect, they're very much the same. And that is that you have to prove fault, somebody made a mistake, and then you have to prove that your client was harmed as a result of that mistake. Those are called damages. The big difference between medical negligence and those other sorts of injury cases, premises liability, auto cases, product liability, the big difference is on the fault side in a medical negligence case, it's a medical analysis. In product liability, it's an engineering analysis typically. In auto cases, it's accident reconstruction. In slip and fall cases, it's just the dynamics of the circumstances that you have to investigate. And I was qualified to do that, but I need help, as most attorneys do. I think they're committing malpractice if they don't seek a medical assistance in evaluating whether or not a healthcare professional made a mistake. That's the big difference between the cases, is that in evaluating fault, you're looking at medical issues, and I think most attorneys aren't qualified to do that without the assistance of a healthcare professional like yourself.
Out of all of the cases that you've been involved in, is there a specific med-mal case that to this day really stands out in your mind?
One that I can think of is recent because it was significant and difficult. It didn't go to trial, but it settled it, not on the courthouse steps, but not long before trial. So it was a mature case, as we call it. We went through all the motion practice and everything. had deposed all of the experts. It involved a woman who had an infection, a post-surgical infection. I can't say too much about it because it's a confidential result, but hotly contested, as most medical negligence cases are. And we had excellent expert witnesses, I thought. And I think that's what eventually brought the insurance company and the provider around to coming up with a reasonable settlement on that case. But, any medical negligence case is difficult. They all stick in your mind. Attorneys are very careful about accepting them and have to make a really careful investigation of the facts in advance of the case, in advance of taking the case, because they're going to be in for a fight. There are no easy ones. And so for one reason or another, they all stick in my mind.
So, Mike, I know a couple of times there were some med mal cases that you had me work with you on to screen them and help you understand just from the nursing perspective what might be going on. Now, you are a very accomplished trial attorney, and I know that there have been attorneys that I have spoken with who really are not sure that there are benefits in having nurses that they utilize to help them through screening of certain cases. Can you just, from an attorney's perspective, explain the good side to it, some of the things of why you have brought nurses on?
Here's what's important to me. Myself, and I think most attorneys, unless their prior life involved healthcare work, they don't have as strong an intuitive sense of what went wrong, why did this medical procedure result in an injury without the assistance of a medical professional. And what I like to say to the people that I work with is, I use a nurse consultant. I need somebody who can read between the lines. When I read a medical chart, I can't always read between the lines because I just don't have the exposure to the healthcare profession by my own personal training and experience, despite 30 years of doing this sort of work. I know from conversations that I have had with doctors who are friends of mine that they are trained to not include quality of care comments in their chart. They don't want to blame other people for the wrongdoing, and they don't want to make comments about the outcome that would reflect on their profession or suggest that they or one of the people they were working with make a mistake. And so their chart notes tend to be not scrubbed, certainly. I don't mean to suggest that people are doing anything wrong, but they don't make an effort to outline in any great detail why the procedure went poorly. Let me give you an example to illustrate my point. I was recently contacted by a woman who was having a cancer procedure. She has cervical cancer, and I think they were performing a hysterectomy. And in the course of the procedure, she had an IV in her arm, and I think that was the infusion point for the inoculant so that they could perform the procedure. And the infusion was misplaced in somehow, some way, or became dislodged. The notes were silent about what went wrong. The anesthesiologist didn't notice it, but the surgeon who was performing the operation could see her arm ballooning up during the course of the procedure. And they had to terminate the hysterectomy so that they could address this problem with her arm. I get the medical chart, and the medical chart was what I just shared with you is basically what the client told me. And I'll say this also, that the doctor, the cancer surgeon, had an exam room conversation with her later and said that somebody made a mistake, which doctors will frequently do because they want to help their client, but they don't put it in the notes, right? And so she shared with me this story, and then I read the chart, and the chart was silent about what had happened, other than to offer the conclusion that there was a problem with the port and the arm needed to be treated. I need someone such as yourself to read those charts, to read between the lines, to explain to me what are the potential reasons that this went wrong, because they're not going to give them to you in the chart. And I can suspect things, but I don't know it like a nurse knows it. I don't know it like another practitioner knows it. And if you're not utilizing a nurse practitioner or a nurse or somebody else to help you make those analyses, you are, I think, committing malpractice.
Wow, that speaks volumes. You just made it very clear some of the benefits that legal nurses bring to the table for attorneys. What would you say to any attorney who has not yet tried the services of a legal nurse?
Well, they're shorting themselves. They have to include a legal nurse on their team, if you will. They're not typically qualified to make an analysis, and if they think they're making an appropriate analysis without the assistance of a legal nurse, and by an analysis, I'm not limiting it just to a liability analysis and medical negligence, although that's certainly very important, but also damage analysis, because attorneys want to know about cause and they want to know about permanency. And legal nurses can be of great assistance with that also. And so if they're not utilizing legal nurses in their PI practice, they're shorting themselves, they're shorting their prospective clients, and they're shorting their current clients.
What would you say to nurses that want to work with attorneys? They're just starting out and they're having a hard time getting the attention of an attorney. I have phone calls all the time. And in fact, in October this month, I'm actually helping some legal nurses with their marketing efforts. But from an attorney perspective, what do you think is the best way for them to get the attention of an attorney?
That's a question I would almost defer to you, because you have the skill in that. You got through to me. I suggest the sort of personality behaviors that someone like yourself, somebody who's enterprising, which is usually an outgoing personality and confidence. And, you have to, if that doesn't come natural to you, you have to learn how to project those sorts of things. Certainly you have to project competence too, in addition to confidence. Attorneys need to know that you're somebody that they can rely on, that you can get the work done in time. And because we live in a world of deadlines as attorneys, and so that's all very important to us. The other thing attorneys want to know about legal nurses, other healthcare professionals, or engineers for that matter, if that's what the case calls for, is that they understand the standards of the law as opposed to the medical standards. We live, I think, attorneys in a simpler world in one respect, with, again, one thing or two things that attorneys want help with in medical cases is evaluating cause, whether or not the mistake was a legal cause, a proximate cause of the injuries, and whether the injuries may or may not be permanent in nature. And our standard in the law is, as to those two questions, whether it's more likely than not, 51%. Okay. And legal nurses who are going to provide assistance and perhaps testify about those things have to know that, because if you don't know that the standard is more likely than not, you get yourself all tied up in a deposition or get yourself all tied up in testifying in front of a jury. And it's a lower burden than I think what the medical standard is for cause and permanency. And so they should understand that distinction also and be prepared to talk about that. And it is a great comfort to an attorney when they are working with a legal nurse who gets those distinctions, and that the reports back to the attorney are framed in the notion of what legal cause is, proximate cause, and for permanency. So that competence about understanding the law, I think, is important for a legal nurse to have, because they got to live in two worlds. They're living in the medical world, and then they got to live in our world. And attorneys like it when they make it easy for us.
Mike, it is such a pleasure to see you again. And thank you so much for being willing to be interviewed today. And I just want to say that it is because of you, once again, that I have had the success that I have, because you gave me some of the building blocks that I needed to understand your world. Any last words?
I don't have any great words of wisdom. I'll leave you with the comments I leave most people is just work hard, have fun, and be good. I try to follow that myself.
Well, thank you for that. If you are an attorney who has watched this podcast, we have been interviewing Attorney Mike Brose with Door Drill and Scow from New Richmond, Wisconsin. And I am Jacque, the owner of CenterPoint Consulting, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, Mike. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jacque. You too. Have a good day. Bye now.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.